It's been a tumultuous week in Washington, from high-level strategic meetings to devastating hurricanes in the Midwest. And while Americans are struggling with natural disasters, Wall Street is facing recession warnings, all under the direct control of President Donald Trump. So where does America stand in this maelstrom of change? At a press briefing this morning, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt announced a series of important trips for President Donald Trump in the coming month, including two notable destinations, El Salvador and Italy. More than just high-level contacts, these are strategic visits that clearly reflect the diplomatic direction the Trump administration is pursuing. The first destination, El Salvador, is not a country that often appears on the diplomatic calendar of U.S. presidents. But for the Trump administration, it is a symbol, a model of aggressive crime fighting that the White House wants to learn from and replicate. According to Ms. Leavitt, the meeting between President Trump and his counterpart Nayib Bukele will focus on security cooperation, intelligence sharing, and establishing training programs to combat transnational gangs, especially MS-13, an organization that has caused trouble in both the U.S. and Central America for many years. Trump's presence in El Salvador is a clear message. The U.S. is not only intervening militarily or economically, but also wants to shape the regional security order through effective bilateral relationships. But behind the trip is a larger calculation. In the context of Central American countries often looking to China for loans and infrastructure projects, the Trump administration wants to affirm that the U.S. is still the leading security and political partner in the Western Hemisphere. Using the El Salvador model as a case study, an example would allow the U.S. to export the sovereignty through homeland security strategy that has been a pillar of Trump's domestic policy. According to an unnamed advisor, the Trump administration sees this as the opening move for a Western Hemisphere anti-gang alliance, a regional security initiative that could be announced in the next term if he is reelected. Immediately after his trip to El Salvador, President Trump will be in Rome, where he will meet with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, a conservative leader with hardline views on borders, sovereignty, and ethnic culture, themes that resonate with Mr. Trump's political philosophy. Ms. Leavitt describes the Trump-Meloni relationship as an ideological alliance, not just of policy but of vision. Two Western nations, two democracies seeking to maintain their national identities in an age of fluid globalization. The meeting will focus on trade, energy cooperation, and especially NATO's role in protecting Europe's borders from uncontrolled migration. Trump has criticized NATO countries for not sharing enough of the burden of defense spending, and this meeting is an opportunity for him to make that demand official. From Central America to Europe, Trump's diplomatic agenda is not just about building personal relationships with leaders. It's also about redrawing the map of America's global influence. It's no longer about the old-fashioned role of global policeman, but about America leading by pragmatic interests, effective bilateral cooperation, and sovereign national values. As Leavitt puts it, the president doesn't travel to sign vague agreements, he travels to act. And that signals a very different direction from traditional American foreign policy. What seemed like routine diplomatic trips were in fact strategic moves for a new order that Mr. Trump is shaping. And if he returns to the White House after 2024, today's meetings will be the foundation of Donald Trump's international political doctrine. For years, El Salvador has been known as one of the world's most violent countries, with gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18 running rampant. But in just 2 years, the small Central American nation has taken the world by surprise, and the White House under Trump is paying close attention. President Nayib Bukele, who has been branded a new dictator by the West, has ordered the arrest of more than 75,000 gang-related suspects in just 18 months. Human rights groups have called for an investigation, but the numbers show impressive results. The murder rate has dropped by more than 80%, and gang-dominated neighborhoods are returning to normal life. And that's giving the Trump administration pause. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt describes El Salvador's security strategy as a vivid example of how sovereignty and the rule of law can be reclaimed from chaos. Despite their different images, one a billionaire former reality TV star, the other a young president who wears AirPods and tweets in slang, Trump and Bukele share a core ideology. Homeland security is the foundation of national sovereignty. President Trump's upcoming visit to El Salvador is, according to many experts, more than just diplomacy. It's a way for Trump to test and simultaneously export a model of assertive policing, something he has proposed but has failed to fully implement in the United States. It's no coincidence that Trump has paid special attention to El Salvador. According to a report from the Department of Homeland Security, thousands of MES 13 members are active in the United States, especially in states like California, New York, and Texas. These gangs have been responsible for a series of serious crimes, from murder to cross-border drug trafficking. For Trump, learning from the Buccal model could be a precursor to tougher policies in the U.S., including mass incarceration, increased powers for special forces, and reduced legal constraints on anti-organized crime measures. Some observers have suggested that the Trump administration sees El Salvador not just as an ally, but as a strategic security outpost to control the flow of Central American migration and prevent criminals from crossing the U.S. border at the source. If the Trump administration is re-elected, we could see a Western Hemisphere policing alliance, with El Salvador as the pivot and the U.S. as the patron. In such a scenario, anti-gang policies would not only be internal, but also internationalized as an export model. However, not everyone agrees. Many human rights organizations warn that the Buccal model comes with violations of individual liberties, lack of fair trials, and the potential for abuse of power. If the U.S. were to follow suit, or even follow suit, it could lead to a bitter legal and domestic political battle. The visit to El Salvador is not simply a symbolic gesture. It is a test of a new security model, one that is uncompromising and uncompromising. And if it succeeds, it could become a core part of the Trump doctrine of national security and sovereignty. As the media was busy reporting on President Trump's packed diplomatic schedule, a more dire reality was playing out at home. Nature was angry. From Missouri to Oklahoma, the skies were gray, the water was rising like a hurricane, and tens of thousands of people were forced to evacuate in desperation. According to the National Weather Service, NWS, this was one of the most severe floods recorded in the American heartland in 30 years. The Arkansas and Missouri river systems exceeded warning levels by 3 to 6 feet, causing a series of levee failures and cutting off vital transportation routes. Towns like Jefferson City, Tulsa, and Pine Bluff were submerged. The National Guard was called in, but the damage continued to pile up. Shortly after governors requested assistance, President Trump signed a federal emergency declaration for at least 6 affected states. Accordingly, millions of dollars from the National Disaster Contingency Fund will be disbursed to rebuild infrastructure, support residents and small businesses. Karoline Leavitt emphasized, "The president does not wait, he acts. This is the decisive leadership that people need in a time of crisis." However, political observers see another layer. At a time when the economy is still unstable and public opinion is divided on foreign policy, natural disasters become an opportunity for the president to demonstrate executive power, compassion, and the image of a leader close to the people. Signing the emergency order is not only a relief, but also a media opportunity to reaffirm the message. Trump is a man of action, a protector of the American people, from the border to the flood zone. On the ground, the response from the people is quite positive. Many households were evacuated in time, and emergency supplies of food, medical supplies, and fuel arrived just 48 hours after the declaration. However, some opposition politicians have questioned the delay in building flood-proof infrastructure, and whether this is a firefighting response to long-standing problems. Scientists warn that extreme events like this will become more common due to climate change. That raises the question, is the U.S. emergency aid system, which relies on rapid response and flexible budgets, still strong enough? The Trump administration may need to consider longer-term infrastructure policies rather than relying on emergency decrees. The floods may recede, but the political aftershocks will not. Natural disasters are always a test of any government, not only its ability to act, but also its ability to shape the image of its leadership in the public mind. And for Trump, this is not just a flood, it is a new media battle. As the United States recovers from devastating storms and floods, another threat is quietly rising from the heart of the economy. Wall Street. A new report from Goldman Sachs has sent shockwaves through the financial world, raising the risk of a U.S. recession to 45% within the next 12 months, the highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Goldman Sachs report, several economic indicators are simultaneously sounding the alarm. GDP growth in the last quarter was lower than expected. The yield curve continues to invert, a historic sign of recession. Consumer confidence has declined for 4 consecutive months. With people reluctant to spend, businesses delaying expansion, and interest rates remaining high to fight inflation, the growth engine is at risk of slowing down cyclically. However, the White House does not think this is a death knell. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said President Trump remains confident in the strength of the U.S. economy, despite the gloomy forecast from Wall Street. She stressed that financial forecasts do not necessarily reflect the full picture, and that the administration is pursuing a series of policies to boost businesses, cut regulations, and support domestic manufacturing. One of the main pillars of Trump's economic message is his deregulation program, removing regulations that he says tie the hands of businesses. From energy to manufacturing to finance, more than 150 federal regulations have been cut since the beginning of his term. Added to that is a program to encourage companies to reshoring manufacturing, especially in strategic sectors such as microchips, energy, and defense infrastructure. Leavitt calls this a roots-based recovery, not based on financial bubbles, but on real production, real jobs. But will these efforts be enough to turn things around? Experts warn that the cost of living remains high, especially in housing and healthcare. Job growth is concentrated in low-value added industries. Exports are slowing due to lingering trade tensions. The market is still anxiously watching the Fed. Will interest rates stay high, or will they be lowered to stimulate demand? And does the government really have the fiscal space to intervene when the economy is in trouble? At the intersection of finance and politics, the biggest question is not the numbers, but the message. Trump needs a strong economy to support his re-election campaign. But if markets continue to lose confidence, the pressure will mount on the White House, not just from Wall Street, but also from voters. Public opinion is divided. One side believes the warning figures. The other side believes this is just a media stunt to weaken the government. The economy is not yet in recession, but it is no longer in the safe zone. And while investors are calculating every interest rate point, every forecast line, the Trump administration is betting all its credibility on the belief that America can get back on its feet without massive bailouts, without controlling the markets, but by its own strength. In a week of recession warnings, the message from the White House was clear. President Trump remains optimistic, and the administration will not let negative forecasts derail its goal of building a strong economy from the ground up. In a nearly 40-minute press conference, Leavitt did not dodge questions about the Goldman Sachs report. Instead, she sharply rebutted the recession argument. Inflation is falling, albeit slowly. Businesses are hiring. Manufacturing orders have not fallen. Stock markets are volatile, but not yet in a crash. The current signs, she said, are that the economy is rebalancing from its post-pandemic overheating, not heading into a full-blown recession. The Trump administration is pursuing an economic philosophy very different from Keynesian interventionism or Obama-style bailouts. They call it the Trump School, a version of economic nationalism that focuses on 3 pillars: removing red tape for businesses, restoring domestic manufacturing, protecting the dollar as a global competitive tool. Leavitt emphasizes, the president doesn't believe in quick fixes. He believes in rebuilding from within. Where Wall Street measures performance through data, Trump measures it through images, speeches to workers, factory tours, videos of production lines returning to life after COVID, all designed to build a positive feeling despite analysts' warnings. The Trump campaign understands that recessions are not just financial, they are emotional. If people believe the future is better, they will act on that belief. The mood is shifting from numbers to campaign strategy. As the economy becomes the focus of the 2024 campaign, 2 parallel stories are being told: market logic, predictive modeling, emotional imagery, leadership trust. For Trump, it all comes down to one core factor: who will make Americans feel more secure about their jobs, about their future, about their national standing? As the world faces constant upheaval, wars, pandemics, supply chain crises, the concept of sustainable growth needs to be rethought. And Trump is proposing a way to redefine success. Not just GDP numbers, but the share of U.S. products consumed domestically, the level of energy self-sufficiency, and resilience to global shocks. In the eyes of the Trump administration, economics is more than policy. It is identity. It is belief. It is a tool to restore a nation's confidence after years of turmoil. Will this belief be strong enough to push back the worrying numbers from the market, or will emotions eventually prevail over reality? A new week begins with opportunities but also challenges. While President Trump continues his diplomatic activities and responds to natural disasters at home, the U.S. is facing a gloomy economic forecast. What do you think of the Trump administration's recent decisions? Leave a comment below.